My name is Stephen Thompson, and I'm 50 years old. I've been married to Natalie for 25 years, and we have 4 children: Daniel, Ethan, Lily, and Noah. We live in a 4-bedroom house in Maplewood, Ohio, a quiet town where everyone knows everyone. For most of my life, I thought I had everything under control. A strong marriage, great kids, a stable job as an engineer at a local factory. I was happy, or at least I thought I was. Looking back, I'm not sure that was true. I'm writing this to figure it out, to understand how everything I believed in began to crumble. I'll start at the beginning so you understand how it all happened. I met Natalie when we were both in our early 20s. It was 1997, I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in mechanical engineering. She was 20, studying to be a teacher. We met at a friend's birthday party at a bar in downtown Maplewood. The place was packed, the music was blaring, and I spotted her from across the room, laughing with friends. She had dark brown hair, blue eyes, and a smile that made everything around her seem to light up. I wasn't much of a pickup artist, but I plucked up the courage to approach her. "Hi, I'm Steve," I said, extending my hand like some kind of nerd. "You know Mike, right?" She looked at me, still smiling, and shook my hand. "Yep, I'm Natalie. And yes, Mike is my cousin. Do you know him from work?" "Since school," I answered. "We played basketball together, although I was a mediocre player." She laughed, and that clear, ringing laugh made me feel like I had already won something. "Well, at least you're honest. Want to grab a drink and tell me more about your terrible basketball skills?" We got to talking and chatted all night about college, families, nonsense like favorite movies. She loved The Princess Bride, and I hadn't seen the movie, so she made me promise I would. By the end of the night, I asked for her number, and she scribbled it on a napkin. I called the next day, and we went out for coffee. One date turned into 2, then 3, and soon we were inseparable. A year later, I proposed. Nothing grand, I took her to the park where we had our first picnic, got down on one knee, and pulled out the ring I had been saving for months. My hands were shaking so much, I almost dropped it. "Natalie, I love you," I said, my voice shaking. "I want to spend my whole life with you. Will you marry me?" She stared at me, her eyes widening, and then she broke into a smile. "God, Steve, yes. Finally, yes." She threw her arms around my neck, and we fell on the grass, laughing like idiots. At that moment, I knew that we would be fine, no matter what happened. We got married in the summer of 1999 in a small church in Maplewood. I was 25, she was 23, and she looked like an angel in a white dress with flowers in her hair. I was so nervous I almost dropped the ring, and she giggled when I finally put it on her finger. We said vows to be together through thick and thin, and I believed every word of them. The reception was at a local banquet hall, with all our friends and family dancing to a silly cover band. My little brother Andrew gave a speech that made everyone laugh, even though half of it was just ribbing me about how boring I was in high school. "Steve's always been a guy with a plan," Andrew said, raising his beer. "And you, Natalie, are his best plan. Here's to you both." We clinked glasses, and Natalie squeezed my hand under the table. "I love you," she whispered. "And I love you," I replied, feeling like the happiest man in the world. The first few years were tough. I got a job as a junior engineer at a factory, and Natalie started teaching 3rd grade at Maplewood Elementary. We rented a 1-bedroom apartment downtown, so cramped it was barely big enough for the 2 of us. The furniture was secondhand. We ate instant noodles, but we didn't care. We were young, in love, with dreams. Every night I'd come home to her cooking something simple, spaghetti or meatloaf, and we'd sit on our sagging couch, talking about the future. "Someday we'll have a big house," I said one night, hugging her while we watched TV, "with a yard for the kids to play in." "Children, huh?" she teased, poking me in the side. "How many will there be?" "At least 3, I said. "Or maybe 4. I want a whole team." She laughed. "A team? Are you planning to open a basketball league?" "Maybe so," I grinned. "But seriously, I want a family with you. A big, noisy, hectic one." She laid her head on my shoulder. Me too, Steve. We'll do it. We both wanted children, but it didn't happen right away. A year passed and nothing. No positive tests, no morning sickness, just waiting. Natalie started to worry. Steve, maybe we should see a doctor, she said one evening, sitting at our tiny kitchen table. We've been trying for a long time, but what if something's wrong? I shrugged, trying to appear calm. We're young, Nat. It will work out. It's just a matter of time. But I was worried too. I didn't want to admit it, but every month when she said it didn't work out again, my insides sank. What if we couldn't have children? What would that mean for us? A year and a half later, Natalie finally convinced me to get tested. I took the tests, and the doctor called us to discuss the results. We were sitting in his office, and he, looking at the papers, said, "Mr. Thompson, you have a low chance of conceiving naturally, but it is small." I felt the blood drain from my face. Natalie squeezed my hand, but I barely noticed. "So, what, we can't do it at all?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Not exactly," the doctor said. "It's not impossible, just low probability. You can try methods like artificial insemination if you want." I nodded, but my head was foggy. We left the clinic, and I stood in the hallway, staring at the floor. "Steve," Natalie said, hugging me, "everything will be fine. We won't give up. If we can't do it ourselves, we'll think about what to do next. I believe we can do it." "Yeah," I muttered, but inside I was seething. Not being a father, it was like a punch in the gut. At home, we barely talked about it. Natalie tried to cheer me up, and I pretended everything was fine. But every time she bought another pregnancy test, I held my breath, hoping for a miracle. Another 6 months passed, and I was starting to think that maybe we really should consider other options, adoption or something. Then one evening, Natalie walked into the living room, beaming like a Christmas tree. "Steve," she said, holding something behind her back. "Look." She handed me a pregnancy test. 2 clear lines. I stared at it, not believing my eyes. "Is this true?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It's true," she said, her eyes shining with tears. "I'm pregnant." I jumped up, hugged her so tightly that I almost choked her, and we both started crying. "Damn, Nat, this is a miracle," I said, kissing her. "We're going to be parents." "We will be," she laughed, "and the best." The pregnancy went smoothly. Natalie was glowing, even though she was sick in the morning, and I was running out to buy her favorite pickles at 3 and 9 months later. In 2002, our first son, Daniel, named after my grandfather, was born. When I held him in the hospital, a tiny pink bundle screaming at the top of his lungs, I felt my heart pound with love. "Hi, Danny," I said, looking at him. "I'm your dad." Natalie, tired but happy, smiled from her bed. "He looks like you, Steve." "I hope he's smarter," I joked, and we both laughed. The first year with a baby was hell. Sleepless nights, diapers, colic, it was all textbook. Natalie took time off, and I tried to help. I would get up at night, rock Danny until he fell asleep, or walk with the stroller on weekends so Natalie could sleep. "You're like a superhero," she said one day when I returned from a walk and Danny was asleep in the stroller. "Superheroes don't smell like baby vomit," I replied, and she snorted. It was a tough time, but a happy one. We became a real family. When Danny was 2, we decided we wanted another child. The doctors said the chances were higher after the first pregnancy, so we didn't wait. Natalie got pregnant pretty quickly, and in 2005, Ethan was born, healthy and strong. Danny was thrilled with his little brother. "This is my it," he said, pointing his finger at the crib. "Exactly, you're it," I laughed. "But don't wake him up, okay?" Then, in 2010, Lily, our only child, arrived, and in 2012, Noah, our youngest. The house was filled with children laughing, crying, and toys in every corner. We moved from an apartment to a house in suburban Maplewood, 4 bedrooms, a big yard. My dad helped with the down payment on the mortgage, and by then I was a shop foreman at a factory, so the salary was enough to pay the loan. "This is our nest," Natalie said when we moved in. "Our children will grow up here." and grandchildren, I winked. Hey, don't rush time, she laughed. Life got busy. In the morning, I had to get everyone ready for school or kindergarten, and then get to work myself. In the evening, I had to check homework, play with the little ones, and read fairy tales. Natalie was an amazing mother, strict but kind. The children adored her. When I came home from work, Lily would shout, "Daddy's here," and she and Noah would run to me, vying with each other to tell me what they had drawn in kindergarten or what song they had learned. Daniel and Ethan, who were older, were more dignified, but I could see how happy they were. I felt needed, important. My younger brother Andrew, 2 years younger, was a part of our lives. We were always close. When we were kids, I stood up for him, helped him with his homework. Our parents are no longer here. Mom died 10 years ago, Dad died 5. After my father died, Natalie supported me a lot and didn't let me drown in grief. So Andrew is the only relative I have left. He never got married, although he had a lot of girls, but they never got to the wedding. He loved our family, and the kids called him Uncle Andy and adored him. He came up with games for them, gave them cool gifts, took them to the zoo or a water park. He worked in a travel agency, often went on business trips, and brought the kids souvenirs, magnets, t-shirts. Andrew, you're spoiling them, I said as he brought Lily a huge teddy bear. Well, I'm a cool guy, he grinned. Natalie loved him too. When he came, she would set the table, bake his favorite cherry pie. Our house was open friends, neighbors often dropped by, but Andrew was the most frequent visitor, at least once a week. I joked. Andy, come move in with us. The guest room is empty. No, Steve, he waved it off. You have your own life, I won't interfere. One evening, we were sitting in the backyard, me, Natalie, the kids, Andrew. Natalie had made meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and the table was groaning with food. The kids were chatting away, Ethan bragging about scoring a goal in gym class, Lily waving a math test. A 5, Lil, I said, looking at her paper. Well done, smart girl. Yeah, Dad, I'm a genius now, she answered proudly. Andrew poured himself and me some lemonade. Steve, you've got a championship team growing up here, he said, winking at Ethan. Maybe it's time to sign them up for the NBA. Ha, maybe in the NBA for eating pizza, I replied, and everyone laughed. Natalie smiled as she looked at us. Steve, are you happy with your team? More than, I said, squeezing her hand. You couldn't think of anything better. I looked at them, at my wife, at my children, at my brother who was joking with the boys, and I thought that this is happiness. Everyone I love is here, together, well-fed and happy. What else do you need? Life in our home in Maplewood, Ohio, was never dull. Natalie and I were raising 4 children, Daniel, Ethan, Lily, and Noah, and every day was something new. Our home, a cozy 4-bedroom with a large backyard, was the center of family chaos. But like any family, we had our share of problems. The kids were growing up, each with their own personalities, and that created a lot of worries. I worked as an engineer at a factory, Natalie taught elementary school, and we tried to keep things under control, although we sometimes argued over little things. My younger brother Andrew, Uncle Andy to the kids, often dropped by, becoming almost part of the family. He got along great with the kids, and I liked that, although I began to notice how much time he spent with them. Friday night, I came home from the factory, kicking off my boots at the door. Voices were coming from the kitchen, Natalie chatting with Lily, and Noah, from the sounds of it, was playing with Legos in the living room. The smell of fried chicken filled the house, and I couldn't help but smile. After a long day, moments like these were like a breath of fresh air. Dad, Lily, our 15-year-old daughter, came running out of the kitchen, her long brown hair bouncing. You're just in time. Mommy makes me chop onions, and I hate it. I laughed as I hung up my jacket. Well, someone has to help. Where are the others? Dan's in his room, like always. Lily rolled her eyes. Ethan's at a friend's, and Noah's building some kind of Lego castle. Okay, I said, walking into the kitchen. Natalie was standing at the stove, stirring sauce. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she looked tired. but she smiled when she saw me. "Hello, dear," she said. "How is your day?" "A long one," I replied, kissing her on the cheek. "And you?" "Oh, don't ask," she sighed. "School was a mess today, and home was no better. Lily, are you done with the onions?" "Almost," Lily muttered, wrinkling her nose. "It's still disgusting." "Disgusting, but delicious," I winked. "Where's Dan? Is he stuck on the computer again?" "Yeah," Natalie said, shaking her head. "I've already called him 3 times to help, but he's like in another galaxy." I frowned. Daniel, our eldest, 23, was finishing college, but was a sullen teenager at home. He had become withdrawn over the last couple of years, barely speaking to us, sitting at his laptop for hours. "I'll go talk to him," I said, heading towards the stairs. I knocked on the door of his room. "Dan, are you there?" "Uh-huh," came a muffled voice. "What do you want?" I opened the door. Dan was sitting at the table with his headphones on, staring at the screen. The room was littered with clothes, books, and empty soda cans. "Son, have you ever come out of this den?" I asked, trying to sound joking. "Mom's cooking dinner, come down and help." He took off one earphone without looking up from the screen. "I'm busy, Dad. Coursework." "Coursework is cool, but family is important too," I said. "Come on, come down. 5 minutes won't kill you." He rolled his eyes but nodded. "Okay, right now." I shook my head as I closed the door. I knew Dan was going through his rebellious phase, but it was still annoying. Downstairs, Noah, our youngest at 13, sat on the living room floor, surrounded by a pile of Legos. "Hey, Noah, what are you building?" I asked, sitting down next to him. "The castle," he answered without looking up. "But it keeps falling apart." "Maybe I can help," I suggested. Noah shrugged. "No, I did it myself. I don't know how to make it hold." I noticed that he seemed sadder than usual. Noah had always been quiet, not as loud as Ethan, and not as confident as Dan. He had few friends at school, and that worried me. "Are you okay, son?" I asked. "You don't seem to be in the mood." "It's fine," he muttered, but then added, "It's just that school sucks." "What happened?" I sat on the sofa, looking at him. "Nothing," Noah said, but he continued. "It's just, no one wants to hang out with me. Everyone's like cool, and I'm not." I frowned. "Look, Noah, you're a great guy. Maybe it just takes a while to find your people. Do you want me to talk to the coach, sign you up for basketball? You can make friends there." "I don't know," Noah said. "I'll think about it." "Think about it," I nodded. "And if anything happens, I'm always here, okay?" "Yeah," he replied, returning to the Lego. I sighed and went into the kitchen. Natalie was already setting the table, and Lily had run upstairs. "Is Dan coming down?" she asked. "He said yes," I replied, "but he's back in his world. And Noah's kind of sad. He says he's not doing well at school." Natalie wiped her hands with a towel. "I know. He's been like this for a week now. I tried talking to him, but he shut down. Maybe you can try again?" "I'll try," I said. "What about Lily? Is she okay?" "I think so," Natalie replied. "Although she was coughing again yesterday, I made an appointment for her to see a doctor next week. These colds of hers are driving me crazy." Lily was often ill since childhood colds, bronchitis. Doctors said she had a weak immune system, and this was a constant concern. I nodded. "Okay, keep me updated. Where's Ethan?" "Brandon's," Natalie said. "He promised to be there for dinner, but you know him." Ethan, 20, was our biggest headache. He attended a local college, but spent more time hanging out with friends than studying. At school, he was constantly called to the principal's office for fighting or acting out. Natalie and I often argued about how to raise him. The door slammed, and Ethan stumbled into the house, disheveled, with a backpack over his shoulder. "I'm home," he shouted. "What's for dinner?" "Chicken and mashed potatoes," Natalie replied. "Go wash your hands, and no sneakers in the kitchen." "Come on, Mom, relax," Ethan grinned, but took off his sneakers. I shook my head. Ethan, can you ever be on time? I've come, haven't I? He replied, plopping down on a chair. Where's Dan? Back in his den? He's coming down, I said, and behaved normally. Got it. That's it, Dad. I'm an angel, Ethan winked. Finally, everyone was at the table, even Dan, who stared silently at his plate. Dinner was noisy. Lily was chatting about the school play, Noah was picking at his food, Ethan was telling some silly story about his friend, and Dan was occasionally making sarcastic remarks. Ethan, did you fight again? Natalie asked, noticing the bruise on his arm. No, I fell off my bike. He waved it off. Everything's fine. From the bike, huh? I squinted. If there are problems at school again, I'll find out. Dad, I told you everything's fine, Ethan snapped. Natalie sighed. Ethan, just be careful, okay? We don't need any more calls from the principal. Okay, he muttered. After dinner, Natalie and I cleared the table while the kids went about their business. Steve, she said, loading the dishwasher. We have to do something about Ethan. He's lying again, I know it. I know, I replied. But if you push him, he'll only get worse. Maybe I should talk to his coach. Football keeps him somewhat in line. Maybe, she agreed. And what about Noah? Did you find out what he has? School matters, I said. He says he has no friends. We need to keep him busy so he doesn't get sad. My poor boy, Natalie sighed. Okay, I'll talk to him too. We finished cleaning, and I sat down on the couch with a beer. Natalie settled down next to me, snuggling up to me. Having a hard day? She asked. It's been a tough year, I chuckled. But we're coping, right? Yeah, she smiled. The main thing is that we're together. The next day, Saturday, Andrew stopped by. He often showed up on weekends, bringing the kids things, comics, candy. Today, he brought a board game. Hey, gang, he called as he walked in. Who's ready to lose to Uncle Andy at Monopoly? I do, Lily screamed as she came down the stairs. But you always cheat. I'm not cheating, I'm a strategist, Andrew grinned, putting the box on the table. Noah walked out of the living room, looking at Andrew with a slight smile. Cool, Uncle Andy. Can I be a car? Of course, Noah, Andrew said, ruffling his hair. And you, Lil, what will you be? A dog, Lily said. And I'll ruin you. I watched Andrew set up the game, and the kids gathered around. I loved how easy he was with them. He was like a big kid, always knowing how to make them laugh. Even Noah, usually quiet, became animated as he fought with Lily over the blocks. Andrew, are you staying for lunch? Natalie asked, coming out of the kitchen with a tray of sandwiches. If you have your cherry pie, then yes, Andrew winked. Already in the oven, she replied, smiling. Ethan came down after seeing the game. Oh, Monopoly, I'm in. But Uncle Andy, get ready, I'm going to destroy you. That's a lot of talk for a little man, Andrew laughed. Come on, sit down. I joined in the game, but mostly watched. Andrew joked with the kids, egged on Ethan, praised Noah for his good moves, and encouraged Lily when she lost. Dan, as usual, stayed upstairs, but Andrew still called out. Dan, come down before Ethan buys the whole board. No, I'm out, came from above. Well, as you wish, Andrew shrugged, throwing the dice. After the game, Andrew stayed for lunch. Natalie set the table, and everyone ate her signature burgers and pie. Andrew told about his last business trip to Chicago, and the children listened, asking questions. Uncle Andy, have you seen any big skyscrapers? Noah asked. Yeah, huge, Andrew replied. I almost got lost in the center once. Cool, Noah said, his eyes lighting up. I want to go there too. We'll go sometime, Andrew promised. We'll take the whole gang. I smiled as I looked at them. Andrew was their favorite uncle, always with gifts and stories. Sometimes I thought he spent more time with us than at home, but that only made me happy. Andy, are you ever going to settle down? I asked, taking a bite of my burger. Find someone, have your own kids. No, Steve, he laughed. I can handle yours just fine. Why would I need mine? Well, suddenly, I shrugged. Otherwise, you're still hanging out like you were 20. That's my style, Andrew winked. And you have fun here anyway. After lunch, Andrew left and Natalie and I sat down to discuss business. Steve, she said, clearing the dishes, we need to figure out what's wrong with Ethan. The college called yesterday, he missed class again. Damn, again? I frowned. I'll talk to him. But Nat, if he doesn't want to study, maybe he should work. He's still young, she objected. He needs to be guided, not driven out. Direct, I muttered. He doesn't listen to us at all. I know, she sighed, but we'll cope. We always have. I nodded, but inside I felt lip sense. The children grew up, and each brought their own concerns. But I looked at Natalie, at our house full of children's voices, and thought that, despite everything, we are still a team. The workday at the Maplewood, Ohio, plant dragged on as usual. I was sitting in my office, sorting through shipping reports. It was 3 in the afternoon, and I was already dreaming of going home to Natalie and the kids Daniel, Ethan, Lily, and Noah. Our cozy 4-bedroom home was my sanctuary after long shifts. But that day, everything changed. One phone call changed my life, and I still shudder when I think about it. I was scrolling through spreadsheets on my computer when my mobile vibrated on the table. The number was unfamiliar, and I almost hung up. I thought it was spammers or clients again. But something made me answer. Hello, this is Stephen Thompson, I said, holding the phone to my ear. Mr. Thompson, this is Dr. Emma Harris at Maplewood General, came a female voice, calm but firm. Are you Lily Thompson's father? My heart sank. Lily, my 15-year-old daughter. Yes, I am her father, I answered, already feeling my blood run cold. What happened? Your daughter was in an accident, she said. She was hit by a car on a crosswalk. She's in serious condition, in intensive care. You need to come as soon as possible. I froze, the doctor's words echoing in my head. Accident. Lily. Serious condition. She's alive, I squeezed out, my voice shaking. Yes, she's alive, the doctor replied. We're doing everything we can. Please come to the emergency room. I'm on my way, I said and hung up. My secretary, Janet, just walked in with some papers. She gasped when she saw my face. Steve, are you okay? She asked, stepping toward me. Lily, accident, I muttered, grabbing my jacket and keys. I need to go to the hospital. I stormed out of the office, ignoring her questions. I barely remember how I got to the car. I think I flew across the parking lot, almost knocking over a trash can. One thought pounded in my head, if only Lily were alive. I cursed myself 1,000 times for not taking her to school that morning. I had an early meeting, and Natalie had said that Lily would walk. The school was only 10 minutes from home. Now I regret it more than anything in the world. The drive to Maplewood General was a blur. I was speeding, not paying attention to the signals, running a couple of red lights. My ears were ringing. Lily, my girl, hold on. I parked at the emergency room without even turning off the engine and rushed inside. The smell of iodine and alcohol hit my nose. In the hall, among the bustle of nurses and patients, I saw Natalie. She was standing against the wall, pale, with red eyes, clearly crying. When she saw me, she rushed toward me. Steve, she sobbed, burying her face in my chest. Lily, I hugged her, feeling my own legs giving way. What's wrong with her, Nat? I asked, afraid of the answer. Where is she? In the operating room, Natalie said, her voice shaking. She was hit by a car, on a crosswalk. She lost a lot of blood. I squeezed her shoulders, trying to keep myself under control. Who called? What did they say? The doctor, she answered, wiping away tears. They said she had a broken hip, a concussion, and some kind of internal bleeding. They're operating. I nodded, although everything inside was screaming. Lily, my girl, who had been chatting about the school play at breakfast this morning, was now in the operating room. A nurse passing by noticed us. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, she asked. Come along, Dr. Harris is waiting for you. We followed her into a small office. Dr. Harris, a woman in her 40s, sat at her desk in a surgical gown. Her gown was stained with blood, and I tried not to think about whose it was. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, sit down, she said, gesturing to the chairs. I know you're scared, but I'll tell you everything I know. How's Lily? I blurted out, not even sitting down. Will she survive? We're doing everything we can, the doctor replied. Lily has serious injuries, a broken hip, a concussion, and a ruptured spleen, which is why she's lost a lot of blood. We're currently operating to stop the internal bleeding. Natalie sobbed softly, squeezing my hand. Her fingers were icy. I forced myself to ask, will she have enough blood? Do you have any supplies? We have reserves, the doctor nodded. But we need a transfusion, and it would be better if it were the blood of a relative with a suitable blood type. What is your blood type? I'm O positive, Natalie said quickly. I'm AB positive, I added, looking at the doctor. She nodded to Natalie. Your group matches Lily's group. You can be a donor. Let's go to the procedure room. Then she turned to me. Unfortunately, your blood type is incompatible with hers. You won't be able to donate blood for her. I nodded, although the doctor's words sounded strange. Lily was O positive? I didn't have time to think about it. All my attention was on Lily's survival. Will she have enough blood? I asked. Will that be it? We'll manage, the doctor replied. We have enough supplies, plus Mrs. Thompson's blood will help. The main thing now is the operation. Natalie stood up, ready to go. I'm ready, she said, though her voice shook. Whatever it takes for Lily. Excellent, the doctor said. Mr. Thompson, wait here. We can't go into the emergency room right now, but I'll let you know as soon as I have news. The nurse led Natalie away, and I sank into a hard plastic chair in the hallway. My head was pounding. Just that morning, Lily had been eating cereal for breakfast, laughing at Noah's joke, and now the doctors were fighting to save her life. I covered my face with my hands and prayed for what must have been the first time in years. Please let her live, I whispered, though I wasn't sure anyone could hear. Time dragged on. Nurses and doctors scurried up and down the hall, and someone carried bloody bandages out of the operating room. Every time the door opened, I flinched, afraid to hear the worst. Natalie returned half an hour later, pale, with a bandage on her arm. She sat down next to me, and I hugged her. How are you? I asked. It's fine, she answered quietly. It's just, Steve, I'm so scared for her. Me too, I said, squeezing her hand. But she's strong. She'll cope. We sat in silence, looking at the operating room door. I tried to think about the good things, how Lily, at 5, jumped in puddles in yellow boots, how she walked to first grade holding my hand, how she danced at a school party dressed as a snowflake. But fear still choked me. Why didn't we take her in the morning? Natalie suddenly said, her voice breaking. I knew the crossing was dangerous. Nat, don't blame yourself, I said, even though I was thinking the same thing. It's not your fault. It's that driver. He brought her to the hospital, she interrupted. The police are already with him. Young guy, he was speeding on a turn. I gritted my teeth. I wanted to find this guy and smear him across the wall, but that wasn't the main thing right now. The main thing is that Lily gets out, I said. The rest will come later. The hours passed. We barely spoke, just held hands. Natalie sobbed occasionally, and I tried to be strong, even though everything inside was breaking. Finally, around 6 o'clock, Dr. Harris came out of the operating room. We jumped up. How is she? I asked, barely breathing. The doctor looked tired, but smiled. The operation was successful. Lily is stable. We stitched up the ruptured spleen, stopping the bleeding. She was transfused with 2 portions of blood, including your wife's blood. Her blood pressure rose, her pulse leveled out. She is still in intensive care, under observation. I felt the tension release. Natalie burst into tears, but this time from relief. Thank you, doctor. I said, my voice shaking. Thank you. That's my job, she replied. She needs rest now. You may see her briefly, but she's still unconscious. We were let into the intensive care unit one by one. I was the first one in. Lily was lying on a bed, pale, with a bandaged head, hooked up to IVs and machines. She looked so small, not at all like our lively, happy girl. I carefully touched her hand. Lily, honey, I whispered. Daddy's here. Just hold on, okay? She didn't hear, but I spoke anyway. The nurse gently led me out a minute later. Natalie followed, and I waited in the hallway. When she came out, her eyes were full of tears, but she nodded. She's so pale, she said. But she's alive. Steve, she's alive. Alive, I repeated, hugging her. The doctors said that Lily would stay in intensive care for a day under anesthesia, and tomorrow, if everything was okay, she would be transferred to a regular ward. We were advised to go home and rest. There was no point in staying in the hospital. They weren't letting us see her anyway. We hesitated, but decided to go back to gain strength. We had to tell the boys everything. I called Daniel, who promised to be home from college by nightfall. We picked up Ethan and Noah from school on the way home, reassuring them that Lily would be fine, she just needed time in the hospital. At home, Natalie and I were like zombies. She took a sedative and lay down, and I stayed in the kitchen, staring into an empty cup of coffee. My thoughts were confused, but one thing was for sure. Lily was alive, and that was the main thing. Although the doctor's words about her blood type Lily's O positive, incompatible with my AB positive, stuck in my head. I didn't understand why it seemed strange, but something about it was wrong. I brushed the thoughts aside, deciding that I would figure it out later. Right now, the main thing was Lily. After that horrific day at Maplewood General, when Lily was hit by a car, I felt drained. My 15-year-old daughter had survived surgery and was stable. That was all that mattered. My wife, Natalie, and I went home to recuperate, but I couldn't relax. Sitting in our kitchen in Maplewood, Ohio, with a mug of cold coffee, I couldn't get the doctor's words about Lily's blood type out of my head. She was O positive, like Natalie, and I was AB positive, and the discrepancy stuck in my mind like a splinter. I started thinking back to my high school biology classes, and the more I thought about it, the more unsettling it became. By morning, I couldn't ignore the thought that seemed crazy. What if Lily wasn't my daughter? I didn't want to believe it, but I knew I had to find out, and I had to secretly get a DNA test. We got home from the hospital around 8 p.m. Natalie was pale, with dark circles under her eyes, the blood drive, and the stress had worn her out. She took a sedative and went straight upstairs. Steve, I'm going to bed, she said, standing in the kitchen doorway. My head is splitting. Go and rest, I replied, trying to speak calmly. I'll sort this out. Have you explained everything to the boys? She asked, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. Yeah, I nodded. Dan's on his way from college. He'll be here by tonight. He picked up Ethan and Noah from school and said Lily was okay. She just needed to stay in the hospital. Okay, she breathed. Steve, do you really think she'll get better? The doctors said yes, I answered, looking at her. She's strong. Everything will be fine. Natalie nodded, but her eyes were still full of fear. I can't stop thinking that it's my fault. I should have taken her there in the morning. Nat, that's enough, I interrupted, perhaps more sharply than I intended. We both couldn't have known. It's that driver's fault, not yours. She looked down. Okay? Good night, Steve. Calm down, I said, and she left. I was left alone in the kitchen, staring into my empty mug. The light from the lamp above the table was too bright, so I turned it off, leaving only the dim glow of the stove. The silence in the house was oppressive. Usually it was noisy Lily chatting, Noah building something out of Legos, Ethan bursting in with another story. But now everything was quiet, and the silence gave too much space to think. I went over Dr. Harris's words again in my head. Lily was O positive, like Natalie. I was AB positive. The doctor said my blood wasn't suitable for transfusion because it wasn't compatible with Lily's. I'm not a doctor, but I had taken biology in school, and I remembered something about blood types. Parents pass on certain combinations to their children, and I started to wonder, could Natalie and I have a child who was O positive? The more I dug into my memory, the worse it became. I pulled out my phone and opened the browser. My hands were shaking a little as I typed in parents and children's blood types. The first few articles confirmed what I vaguely remembered. If one parent is AB and the other is O, the child can only be A or B. O is not an option. I read it 3 times, hoping I was wrong, but it was clear. Lily couldn't be O positive if I was her father. It was like a punch in the gut. Shit, I muttered out loud, leaning back in my chair. This can't be. I stood up and started pacing the kitchen, trying to calm down. Maybe I was getting something wrong. Maybe there were some exceptions. I went online again, typing in exceptions in blood type inheritance. I found a couple of forums where people were discussing rare cases, mutations, chimerism, some other scientific nonsense. But it was all too complicated and unlikely. The more I read, the clearer it became. The likelihood that Lily was my daughter, with her O positive, was almost zero. I sat back down, covering my face with my hands. My thoughts were in a tangle. Lily was my daughter. I was in the hospital when she was born. I held her, tiny and pink-cheeked, and cried with happiness. I changed her diapers, taught her to ride a bike, applauded at her school plays. She was my girl, but biology said otherwise, and it was driving me crazy. No, I said to myself, this is nonsense. There must be an explanation. I thought maybe the hospital had made a mistake. They mixed up the tests, or the doctor had said something wrong. But she was sure. Lily was O positive, so Natalie could give blood, but I couldn't. I remembered the way the doctor looked at me when I told her I was AB positive. She knew right away that I didn't match. So a mistake was unlikely. Then I thought of something else. If Lily wasn't mine, then Natalie had someone else. The thought was like a knife. Natalie was my wife, my best friend, the mother of our children. In 25 years of marriage, I had never doubted her faithfulness. She was always there, caring for us, laughing at my stupid jokes. Could she really deceive me? I didn't want to believe it, but the numbers in my head didn't add up, and it didn't give me any peace. I stood up, opened the fridge, took out a beer, but didn't drink it. I just held the cold can and looked out the window. It was dark outside, only the neighbor's streetlight was shining. I remembered how Natalie had looked at me in the hospital when we were waiting for news about Lily. Her eyes were full of tears. She was holding my hand. This was my Natalie, the woman I love. But what if she'd been hiding something all these years? Steve, why aren't you sleeping? Natalie's voice rang out. I flinched. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, in her pajamas, her hair disheveled. I can't, I replied, putting the beer on the table. I keep thinking about Lily. She came over and sat down next to me. Me too. But the doctors said she'll recover. We have to believe. I know, I said, looking at the table. It's just hard. I understand, she touched my hand. Steve, we'll get through this, as always. I nodded, but her touch suddenly felt foreign. I pulled my hand away, pretending to reach for the mug. Are you okay? She asked, frowning. You seem kind of, I don't know, it's distant. Just tired, I replied, forcing a smile. It's been a hell of a day. Yeah, she sighed. Okay, I'll try to sleep. Are you coming? Soon, I said. I'll finish my coffee and come. She looked at me as if she wanted to say something, but she simply nodded and walked away. I was alone, and my thoughts started spinning again. I couldn't just leave it like that. If there was even the slightest chance I was wrong, I had to know. But how? Asked Natalie. No, that was stupid. If she really had cheated on me, she wouldn't admit it. And if not, I'd hurt her by suspecting her. I remembered seeing an advert on TV for DNA tests, the kind you could do anonymously without going to court. That was the way out. I picked up my phone again and started looking for labs in Ohio. I found one in Columbus, an hour outside of Maplewood. The website said they did paternity tests confidentially, only DNA samples from the father and child. I opened their contact information and almost called, but stopped myself. It was almost midnight. I decided I'd call in the morning. I finished my coffee and went upstairs, but I couldn't sleep. I lay down in the guest room so as not to wake Natalie. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Lily. She was my daughter, I had no doubt about it. But biology said otherwise, and I had to check. If I was wrong, I just put the thoughts out of my head. And if I wasn't, I didn't even want to think about that. I woke up early in the morning, around 6. Natalie was still asleep. I went down to the kitchen, made coffee, and called the lab as soon as they opened at 7. "Hello, this is Columbus Genetics," a female voice replied. "How can I help you?" Good afternoon," I said, trying to speak calmly. "I'd like to know about a DNA test for paternity." "Of course," the woman answered, as if it were a normal question. "Do you want an official test or an anonymous one?" "Anonymous," I said quickly. "For myself, so no one knows." "Okay," she said. "The test requires DNA samples from the alleged father and the child. Mouth swabs or hair roots are best. You can bring personal items like a toothbrush, but the results are less accurate." "I understand," I said. "And how long will it take?" "Usually a week," she answered. "If it's urgent, we can do it in 3 days, but that's more expensive." "A week is fine," I said. "How much does it cost?" "The standard test is $400, she said. "You can bring in samples anytime Monday through Friday between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. "Great," I said. "I'll come in a few days. Thank you." "Please," she replied. "Call me if you have any questions." I hung up and exhaled. The first step had been taken, but inside, everything ached. The idea of testing whether Lily was mine felt like a betrayal. I loved her. I loved all my children, Daniel, Ethan, Noah. But I had to know the truth, or it would consume me. I heard footsteps upstairs. Natalie was awake. I quickly put my phone away and poured myself more coffee, pretending to just sit. She came down, still in her pajamas. "Good morning," she said, yawning. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little," I answered. "And you?" So, she said, pouring herself some coffee. "I keep thinking about Lily. I have to go to the hospital today." "Yes," I nodded. "I'll call the doctor and find out when I can see her." "Okay," she said, looking at me. "Steve, are you sure you're okay? You were acting weird yesterday." "It's okay, Nat," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just worried about Lily and tired." "I understand," she said, but her gaze was wary. "Okay, I'm going to take a shower, and then we'll go to the hospital." "Yeah," I replied. "I'll call work in the meantime and let them know I'll be out." She left, and I was left staring into my mug. I knew I wouldn't rest until I took the test. But the thought that Natalie might have cheated on me was unbearable. I remembered how supportive she had been when we found out I had fertility issues, how happy she had been when the children were born. Was it all a lie? I pushed the thoughts aside. First the test. Then I'd figure it out. I called the plant and said I was taking time off due to a family emergency. My boss, Bob, was understanding. "Steve, don't worry," he said. "Family is more important. How is Lily?" "Stable," I replied. "Thanks, Bob." "Hang in there," he said. "Call me if anything happens." I hung up and started thinking about how to get a sample of Lily's DNA. Hair from a brush, a toothbrush. I figured I'd figure it out later when we went to the hospital. Maybe there would be a chance. I could get my sample right now. I found a cotton swab in the bathroom, swiped it across the inside of my cheek, and put it in a clean bag. It felt weird, collecting my DNA like some kind of spy, but I knew I was going all the way. Natalie came down, already dressed. "Ready," she said. "Shall we go?" "Yes," I answered, grabbing the keys. "Let's go see our girl." We got into the car, and I turned on the radio to drown out the silence. Natalie estered out the window, and I tried not to think about what I had planned. Lily was the most important thing, but that splinter in my head, the mismatch in blood types, did not give me peace. I had to know the truth, whatever it was. I woke up at 6 in the morning, and Natalie was still asleep in our bedroom. I'd purposely laid down in the spare room so as not to disturb her, or frankly, so as not to look her in the eye. The conversation with the lab the night before was spinning in my head. The woman on the other end of the line had said they needed mouth swabs or hair roots, so I decided to start with myself. I went down to the bathroom, grabbed a Q-tip from the first aid kit, and swiped it across the inside of my cheek, just like the lab's website said. I put the tip in a clean Ziploc bag, labeled it Steve, and hid it in a drawer in the living room. It felt weird, like I was some kind of spy collecting my DNA, but I knew it was just the beginning. Natalie came down to the kitchen around 7, already dressed, with her hair wet from the shower. "Good morning," she said, pouring herself some coffee. "You haven't slept again." "I slept a little," I lied, sitting at the table with a phone. "I just got up early. I need to call work, take another day off." "Yes," she nodded. "I won't go to school today either. I'll go to Lily. The doctors said I can visit her after lunch." "Okay," I said. "I'll go too. I'll call Bob and tell him I won't be there." "Are you okay, Steve?" she asked, looking at me. "You seemed kind of distant yesterday." I forced myself to smile. "I'm just worried about Lily. And tired. It's okay, Nat." She looked at me as if she wanted to add something, but only nodded. "Okay, I'm getting ready, then I have to take Noah to school. Ethan probably spent the night at Brandon's again. I'll call him," I said. "And Dan, I'll find out when he's here." Natalie went to get ready, and I dialed my boss, Bob. He answered right away. "Steve, how are you?" he asked. "How's Lily?" "Stable," I replied. "The doctors say he'll get better, but I want to be close. Can I have a couple more days?" "Of course," Bob said. "Family comes first. Call me if anything happens." "Thank you," I said and hung up. Then I called Ethan. He was, as expected, visiting his friend Brandon. "Ethan, where are you?" I asked, trying not to sound irritated. "Brandon's," he answered, yawning. "Just woke up." "What happened?" "Lily is in the hospital," I said. "Come home, then we'll go to her together." "Wow, seriously?" Ethan's voice became alarmed. "Is she okay?" "Yes, but she needs time," I replied. "Be home in an hour, okay?" "Yeah, I will," he said and hung up. I called Daniel, our oldest, who was in college 2 hours away. He already knew about Lily, so I called him yesterday. "Dad, I'm leaving in an hour," he said. "I'll be there for dinner. How's Lily?" "The doctors say she's stable," I replied. "Come on over, son. We'll all be at the hospital." "Okay," he said. "I'll be there soon." I put the phone down and exhaled. Now I had to collect DNA samples from the kids. I figured the easiest way would be to take their toothbrushes. They'd definitely been used, and there'd be plenty of DNA in there. But I had to do it discreetly. Natalie was upstairs, Noah was still asleep, Ethan and Dan weren't home. This was my chance. I went into the bathroom, where all the kids' toothbrushes were on the shelf. I'd bought some sterile Ziploc bags at the drugstore and some gloves so I wouldn't ruin anything. I put on the gloves and carefully picked up Lily's toothbrush, which was pink and had a unicorn sticker on it. I put it in the bag, labeled it Lily, and hid it in my jacket pocket. Then I picked up Ethan's toothbrush, which was blue and battered. I wrapped that up and labeled it too. Noah's toothbrush was green and had a Star Wars logo on it, so I picked that up too. Daniel was a bit more difficult, since he was rarely home, but his old toothbrush was still on the shelf, so I figured it would do. I labeled the bag Dan and put it away. To be on the safe side, I decided to take some more hair. Lily's comb was on the shelf in the bathroom, and it always had her long brown hair on it. I found some with white roots, the bulbs needed for DNA. I carefully put them in a separate bag. Noah had a comb that he used, and there were hairs with roots in it too. I packed them up too. It was more difficult to take hair from Ethan and Dan. They had short haircuts, and I decided that their brushes would be enough. I hid all this in a bag that I kept in the car so that no one would find it. I felt like crap. Collecting my children's toothbrushes and hair like I was some kind of detective was disgusting. I loved them: Lily, Noah, Ethan, Dan. They were mine. I raised them, taught them to ride bikes, took them to soccer games, and read them fairy tales. But this thought about Lily's blood type was nagging at me. If she wasn't mine, what did that mean? I had to know. Natalie came down with Noah, who was rubbing his eyes, still sleepy. "Noah, come on, eat quickly," she said, placing a bowl of cereal in front of him. "We'll be late for school." "I don't want to go to school," Noah muttered, looking into his bowl. "I know," said Natalie, "but we have to. After school, let's go to Lily's. Do you want to?" "Yeah," he nodded, perking up. I looked at Noah and thought about how to get his DNA if the brush didn't work. But for now, I decided that what I had would be enough. "Steve, are you going to the hospital?" Natalie asked, packing Noah's backpack. "Yes," I replied. "I'll just drop by work. I need to take care of a couple of things." "Okay," she said. "I'll meet you there. I'll call the doctor and find out when I can see Lily." "We have a deal," I said, finishing my coffee. I dropped Noah off at school and then headed toward Columbus. I wasn't actually going to work. I had to go to the lab. I called there on the way to check on the details. "Columbus Genetics," the same female voice replied. "How can I help you?" "Hello, I called yesterday," I said, "about the DNA paternity test. I want to clarify what I need to bring." "Excellent," she said. "DNA samples from the alleged father and the children. Mouth swabs or hairs with roots are the best options. Toothbrushes are also good, but slightly less accurate. How many children are you testing?" "4," I answered, feeling my throat tighten. "Okay," she said, as if this was a routine matter. "Bring the samples, label them clearly so as not to mix them up. The results will be in a week or 3 days if urgent." "A week will do," I said. "How is it anonymous? No one will know." "Complete confidentiality," she assured. "We only use codes, no names in the database. You will receive the result by the order number." "Great," I said. "I'll come tomorrow or the day after." "We're waiting for you," she replied. "The address is on the website, from 7 in the morning until 6 in the evening." I hung up and exhaled. This was real. I was going to check if the kids were mine. The thought made me sick, but I couldn't stop. I remembered holding Lily in the hospital, teaching Ethan to throw a ball, Noah saying "Daddy" for the first time. They were mine. But what if they weren't? I had to know. When I got home, I found that Natalie had gone to the hospital. Ethan wasn't home yet. Noah was at school. Dan was on his way. I pulled out the bag of samples and checked everything again. The bags were labeled. Nothing was mixed up. I felt like a traitor. It was like I was digging into their lives behind their backs. But I couldn't help it. If Lily wasn't mine, then maybe the others weren't either. I didn't want to think about it, but the thought was already there. I got in my car and drove to the hospital to be with Lily and Natalie. On the way, I tried to distract myself by turning on the radio, but the music only irritated me. I thought about how to get the samples to the lab without anyone noticing. Tomorrow, I would say I was going to work and drive to Columbus. That was the plan. At the hospital, I found Natalie in Lily's room. She was sitting by the bed, holding her daughter's hand. Lily was pale, but no longer in intensive care. She had been moved to a regular ward. She was asleep, hooked up to enrollment 4. "How is she?" I asked, approaching. "Better," Natalie answered quietly. "The doctors said she woke up briefly, but she's still weak. They'll check her again soon." "Okay," I said, looking at Lily. Her face was so peaceful, despite the bandages. I clenched my fists to keep from crying. "Steve, are you sure you're okay?" Natalie asked, looking at me. "You don't seem like yourself." "I'm just worried," I replied, looking away. "I want her to get better soon." "Me too," she said, squeezing my hand. "We can handle this, right?" "Yes," I answered, but inside I was screaming. I couldn't look her in the eye, knowing that tomorrow I would be taking samples of her children to the lab right_file laboratory txt to check if they were mine. I slipped out of the room, saying I was going to get coffee. In reality, I just couldn't sit still. I felt like a liar, a traitor, but the truth was more important. It had been a couple of days since I dropped off the DNA samples at the lab in Columbus. I still couldn't believe I'd taken this step to test whether my children were mine. Lily, my 15-year-old daughter, was at Maplewood General recovering from the accident, and the doctors said she was recovering well. My wife, Natalie, and I were trying to go about our daily lives, but inside I was seething. I tried to hide my anxiety, pretending everything was normal, but the thought of Lily's blood type mismatch was still troubling me. The wait for the test results, which were due in a week, was excruciating. I was also starting to notice something I'd never noticed before. My children Daniel, Ethan, Lily, and Noah were strikingly similar to my brother Andrew. His brown eyes with a greenish tint, his smile, I could see it all in them now. And one old joke, told on New Year's, suddenly surfaced in my memory, adding fuel to the fire. I returned home from work on Wednesday evening, tired from my shift at the factory. The Maplewood house greeted me with the usual noise. Noah, our youngest at 13, was watching cartoons in the living room, and Natalie was cooking dinner. The smell of spaghetti and tomato sauce filled the kitchen. Lily was still in the hospital, but Natalie said she might be moved to a regular room soon. "Hello, dear," Natalie said, turning away from the stove. "How's your day?" "Fine," I replied, throwing my jacket on a chair. "Long, as always. And you?" "I was at Lily's," she said, stirring the sauce. "She woke up today, even spoke a little. The doctors are happy." "Really?" I felt relieved. "That's great. When can I visit her?" "Tomorrow after lunch," Natalie answered, smiling. "She asked about you." "Okay," I nodded, trying to smile back. "Where's Ethan?" "At Brandon's," she sighed. "He promised to be there for dinner, but you know him." Ethan, our 20-year-old, was always hanging out with his friends. I shook my head. "We need to talk to him." "Is he skipping college again?" "Most likely," Natalie said. "I'm tired of telling him off. Maybe you could try." "I'll try," I muttered, although I knew that Ethan would hardly listen to me. I went into the living room where Noah was watching some cartoon about robots. "Hey, Noah, how are you?" I asked, sitting down on the couch. "It's fine," he replied, without looking up from the screen. "Will Lily recover?" "Yes, son," I said. "We'll go to her tomorrow. Do you want to?" "Yeah," he nodded, and I noticed his eyes, brown with a slight greenish tint, flash. Exactly like Andrew's. I froze, looking at him. Why hadn't I noticed this before? Or had I noticed it but not paid attention to it? "Dad, what's wrong?" Noah asked, turning to face me. "Nothing," I said quickly, looking away. "I was just thinking. Go wash your hands. Dinner is coming soon." He shrugged and ran into the bathroom. I sat there, feeling my insides tighten. Noah, Lily, Ethan, even Dan, they all suddenly seemed like Andrew to me. His smile, the way he spoke, even the way he tilted his head when he laughed. I pushed the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. Natalie called everyone to the table. Ethan stumbled in at the last moment, disheveled and grinning as usual. "Well, finally," Natalie said, setting a plate in front of him. "Ethan, can you ever be on time?" "Mom, I've been busy," he replied, grabbing his fork. "Business, you know." "What else?" I asked, squinting. "Hanging out with Brandon again?" "Yeah, right," he shrugged. "We were just playing video games. Relax." "Ethan, you have college," I said, trying not to lose my temper. "Did you skip class again?" "I didn't miss it," he snapped. "I was at the morning lectures. It's just that during the day, well, I was busy." "Busy," Natalie repeated, shaking her head. "Steve, talk to him. Otherwise, I don't know what to do." "I'll talk," I said, looking at Ethan. But son, if I see any more gaps, we'll have a serious talk. Okay, okay, he muttered, rolling his eyes. I saw him smile, and it was a smile that was identical to Andrew's. I gripped my fork, trying not to show that I was offended. After dinner, Natalie started clearing the table, and I went into the garage to check on the car, or, honestly, to be alone. I sat there, looking at my tools, thinking about what I'd done. The DNA samples mine, Lily's, Ethan's, Noah's, and Dan's were already at the lab. I dropped them off that morning while Natalie was at Lily's. Everything had gone smoothly in Columbus. The guy at the front desk took the bags. I'd signed the papers under a fake name, John Smith, as we'd agreed, and paid the $400. They'd said the results would be in a week, and I'd chosen to pick them up in person. I didn't want anything to go wrong online. I felt like crap. Picking up my kids' toothbrushes and hair to check if they were mine felt like a betrayal. But I couldn't stop. Every time I looked at Noah or Ethan, I saw Andrew. His eyes, his smile. And then I remembered something that had seemed so insignificant before. 5 years ago, we celebrated New Year's at our house. Everyone was there. Me, Natalie, the kids, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, Andrew. We were sitting at a big table, eating turkey, drinking wine, and laughing. Lily, then a little girl, was sitting next to Andrew, and he gave her a stuffed animal, I think it was a rabbit. My mother-in-law, Lucy, looked at Lily and said, God, Lily is so cute. Her eyes are just like Uncle Andy's. Everyone laughed, and Andrew winked, hugging Lily. Really, Lil? You're my copy, beautiful, he said, kissing the top of her head. Yeah, Uncle Andy, Lily giggled. I smiled then too and didn't pay any attention to it. Well, they look alike, they're related. But now this joke sounded in my head like an alarm bell. I remembered how Lily looked at the world with her brown eyes with a greenish tint exactly like Andrew's. My eyes are blue, Natalie's are gray. Where did Lily get those? I went back into the house, trying not to show that something was bothering me. Natalie was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Steve, why are you hanging out in the garage? She asked, looking up. Is everything okay with the car? Yeah, I was just checking the oil, I lied. Everything's fine. Okay, she said. I just spoke to the doctor. Lily can be moved to a regular ward tomorrow if all goes well. Great, I said, sitting down next to you. Should I go with you tomorrow? Of course, she smiled. Lily will be glad to see you. I nodded, but my insides were clenching. I looked at Natalie, at her familiar face, and I couldn't believe I was suspecting her of something like this. She had been my wife for 25 years, the mother of our children. But that joke about Lily and Andrew, those eyes, that blood type, it all added up to a frightening picture. Andrew stopped by that evening. He came by often, especially now that Lily was in the hospital. He brought a bag of donuts and comic books for Noah. Hey, gang, he shouted as he entered. Where's my favorite nephew? Here. Noah ran out of the living room when he saw the donuts. Uncle Andy, you're the best. Yeah, I know, Andrew grinned, handing him the package. Where's Ethan? Upstairs, I said, meeting him in the hallway. Just arrived. Natalie's in the living room. Andrew walked into the living room where Natalie was leafing through a magazine. Hey, Nat, he said, setting the donuts on the table. How's Lily? Better, she replied, smiling. Tomorrow, maybe, they'll transfer you to a regular ward. Thank you for stopping by. Oh, come on, he waved it off. I have to support my favorite niece. I looked at him, and there was that smile again, just like Ethan's when he was in a good mood. I gritted my teeth, trying not to give myself away. Andy, will you stay for tea? I asked, trying to sound casual. No, he said, shaking his head. I still have to go to the office to finish some paperwork. I'll drop by tomorrow and tell you how Lily is. Agreed, I said, walking him to the door. When he left, I returned to the living room. Noah was already nibbling on a donut and leafing through a comic book. Dad, Uncle Andy's cool, he said. He promised to take us to the water park when Lily gets better. Cool, I said, but my voice was strained. I looked at Noah, at his eyes, and saw Andrew again. It was like an obsession. Natalie noticed my mood. "Steve, are you sure you're okay?" she asked when Noah had gone upstairs. "You've been so quiet all evening." "I'm just tired," I said, looking away, "and I'm worried about Lily." "I understand," she said, touching my hand. "But she's getting better. Everything will be fine." "Yeah," I nodded, but her touch didn't calm me down. I was only thinking about the test results that were waiting for me in a few days. The next day, we went to the hospital. Lily was indeed transferred to a regular ward. She was pale, but she smiled when she saw us. "Dad," she said, holding out her hands. "You've finally come." I hugged her carefully so as not to touch the bandages. "Hey, honey, how are you?" I asked, sitting down next to her. "It's fine," she replied. "Only my leg hurts, and it's boring here." "You'll be home soon," I said, stroking her hand. "We're all waiting." Natalie sat on the other side, adjusting Lily's pillow. "Lil, have you eaten today?" she asked. "The doctor said you need more protein." "Mom, I ate." Lily rolled her eyes. "Don't start." I looked at her brown eyes with a greenish tint, and I thought of Andrew again. It was like a blow. I forced myself to smile so she wouldn't notice. "Dad, why are you so serious?" Lily asked, looking at me. "I'm just glad you're okay," I replied, squeezing her hand. "You'll be running like you used to soon." "I hope so," she said, smiling. We spent a couple of hours at the hospital, chatting with Lily. She joked about the nurses, and I tried to be cheerful, but inside I was clenching. I thought about the test, what it might show. I loved Lily, I loved all my children, but that joke about her resemblance to Andrew, those eyes, that blood type, it all bothered me. At home, I continued to live as usual. In the morning to work, in the evening with my family, but all the time I was counting the days until the results. At work, my colleague, Mike, noticed that I was not in the game. "Steve, why are you so gloomy?" he asked as we drank coffee in the break room. "Lily is getting better, right?" "Yes," I answered, looking into my cup. "Just tired. A lot of things." "I understand," he said. "If you need to talk, I'm here." "Thank you," I said, but I didn't want to talk. How could I explain that I was checking to see if the children were mine? Every night I'd lock myself in the bathroom, turn on the water, and just sit there, trying to keep myself together. I didn't want Natalie or the kids to suspect anything. But I knew I wouldn't rest until I had answers. That old New Year's joke about Lily and Andrew, those eyes, that smile, it was like a puzzle I didn't want to put together, but couldn't stop. The morning started as usual. I woke up at 6. Natalie was still asleep. I quietly went down to the kitchen, made coffee, and sat there looking at my phone. The lab opened at 7, and I planned to stop there on my way to work. I told Natalie that I had an early shift so as not to arouse suspicion. She was already busy with Lily, who was already in a regular ward, and did not ask unnecessary questions. "Steve, are you going to the hospital today?" she asked last night when we were having dinner. "Yes, I'll drop by after work," I answered, trying to speak evenly. "How's Lily?" "Better," she said, smiling. "Yesterday I was already sitting there, even joking. They'll probably discharge me soon." "Great," I nodded, but inside I was cringing. All I could think about was the test. After Natalie went to bed, I double-checked the order code the lab had given me. They had promised the results would be ready today, and I could pick them up in person. I didn't want them to come by mail or online, too risky. I had to see it for myself. At 6:45, I left the house, got in my car, and drove to Columbus. The drive took an hour, and I was nervous the entire time. My hands were sweating, slipping on the steering wheel. I turned on the radio, but even my favorite rock station was annoying, so I turned it off. "Calm down, Steve," I said out loud, looking at the road. "Whatever it is, you'll find out the truth, and you'll figure it out." But I wasn't ready. Deep down, I hoped this was all a mistake, that Lily was mine, that the other kids were mine. I remembered holding them all in my arms when they were born, teaching Ethan to ride a bike, the first time Noah said, "Daddy." They were mine. But what if they weren't? I parked outside the lab building, a gray office building with a sign that said Columbus Genetics. I walked into the reception area and was greeted by the same guy who had taken the samples. He recognized me. "Mr. Smith," he asked, looking at the computer. "The results for you?" "Yes," I replied, giving the fictitious name I was using. "Order code 4729. "Just a minute," he said, going into the back room. A few minutes later, he returned with a thin, sealed envelope. "Here, everything is ready. If you have any questions, call." "Thank you," I said, taking the envelope. My fingers were shaking, but I tried not to show it. I walked out to the parking lot and got into the car. The envelope was on the passenger seat, and I looked at it like it was a bomb. I wanted to open it right there, but I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to control myself if the news was bad. I decided to drive to the nearest cafe to read it in peace. At the cafe, I ordered a black coffee and sat in the far corner, away from the people. My hands were still shaking as I tore open the envelope. Inside were several sheets of paper with tables, stamps, and a bunch of numbers. I quickly found the main thing, the lines with the results. On each sheet, for each child, Daniel, Ethan, Lily, Noah, the same thing was written. Probability of biological paternity, 0% excluded. I read it once, then twice, then 3 times. 0%. For all 4. Not a single match. "Shit," I whispered, feeling the blood drain from my face. "It can't be." I leafed through the papers, hoping to find a mistake. There were details. For Daniel, a mismatch at some loci. For Ethan, the same. For Lily, for Noah. All the same. I am not their father. Not any of them. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the ceiling of the cafe. The waitress passed by and asked, "Is everything all right, sir? Would you like some more coffee?" "No, thank you," I squeezed out, without even looking at her. She left, and I sat there clutching the papers. The shock was coming in waves. I had raised these kids for 23 years, 20 years, 15 years, 13 years. I had been to their birthday parties, taken them to soccer games, fixed their bikes, and now 0%. They weren't mine. Natalie, my wife, had lied to me for 25 years. Someone else was the father of my children, and I almost knew who. Andrew, my little brother. His eyes, his smile, which I had seen in children. That New Year's joke when my mother-in-law said that Lily looked like him. I remembered how he was always there in our house, with our children, with Natalie. He came once a week, brought gifts, and joked. I thought he was just a loving uncle, and now it all came together. But I wasn't 100% sure. I needed proof. I shoved the papers back into the envelope and tucked it into the glove compartment. I couldn't just blame Andrew. If I was wrong, it would destroy everything, our family, our relationship. But if I was right, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Rage boiled inside me. I wanted to storm the house, throw the papers in Natalie's face, demand answers. But I knew it was stupid. She'd deny it, and I couldn't prove it. I needed more facts. I started the car and drove to work, feeling like I'd been run over by a truck. At the office, my coworker Mike noticed that I was out of action. "Steve, why are you so pale?" he asked as I sat down at my desk. "Is Lily worse?" "No, she's fine," I replied, looking at the monitor. "I just didn't get enough sleep." "I understand," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "If you need to talk, I'm here." "Thanks," I muttered, but I didn't want to talk. How could I explain that my life had just collapsed? I sat there all day, pretending to work. My mind was filled with the kids, Dan, Ethan, Lily, Noah. I loved them, and that hadn't changed. But knowing they weren't my blood was like a knife in my heart. I remembered every moment holding Dan when he was born, teaching Lily to tie her shoes, laughing with Ethan when he smashed a ball through the window. It had all been real, but now it was poisoned by lies. I called Natalie at lunchtime to check in. "Steve, "Where are you?" she asked. "I'm at the hospital with Lily." "At work," I replied. "How is she?" "Okay," she said, and I heard her smile. "He's sitting there, chatting. The doctors say he'll be discharged soon." "Great," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I'll drop by this evening." "Deal," she replied. "Steve, are you sure you're okay? You sound weird." "It's okay, Nat," I lied. "I'm just tired. See you tonight." "Okay," she said. "I love you." "Yeah," I said, and hung up. The words, "I love you," were stuck in my throat. I couldn't say them, knowing that she had probably been lying to me our entire lives. In the evening, I went to the hospital. Lily was sitting on the bed, scrolling through her phone. She smiled when she saw me. "Dad," she said. "Finally, I'm going crazy with boredom here." "Hey, honey," I said, hugging her carefully. "How are you?" "I'm fine," she replied. "My leg hurts, but the doctors say I'll be home soon." "That's cool," I said, sitting down next to him. "What's on the phone?" "Just memes," she giggled. "Want to see them?" "Go ahead," I said, and she showed me some stupid video about cats. I laughed, but inside I was torn. I looked at her brown eyes, the same as Andrew's, and thought about the results in my car. Natalie entered the room with coffee. "Steve, you're here," she said, smiling. "Lily was just telling me how the nurse got her." "Yeah, she always makes me eat that nasty yogurt," Lily complained. "It's for your own good," Natalie said, adjusting her pillow. "Steve, are you staying?" "Not for long," I replied. "I still need to pick up Noah." "Okay," she said. "I'll stay until the evening." I nodded, looking at Lily. I loved her, and that hadn't changed. But the truth I'd learned was like poison. I had to confirm my suspicions about Andrew. Without proof, I couldn't move on. I left the room saying I was going to get some water. In reality, I just wanted to breathe. I stood in the hallway, looking out the window at the parking lot. I knew I wouldn't stop until I knew everything. Andrew was the key. His DNA could prove or disprove everything. My wife Natalie was busy caring for Lily, who was recovering from the accident, and I tried to act normal, although inside everything was screaming. I suspected that my brother Andrew was the real father of the children, but I needed proof. I decided to collect his DNA at a family dinner to celebrate Lily's release from the hospital. This was my chance, and I waited for it, hiding my emotions and avoiding Natalie so as not to give myself away. The days before dinner dragged on. I went to work, visited Lily, chatted with the boys, but it was all a blur. Natalie began to notice that I was different. On Wednesday night, as we were clearing away the dinner dishes, she suddenly stopped and looked at me. "Steve, what's wrong?" she asked, putting the dishes in the dishwasher. "You've been quiet all week, like you're floating somewhere." I shrugged, trying to speak calmly. "Just tired, Nat. Work, Lily, everything's piled up." She frowned, wiping her hands with a towel. "Are you sure? I can see that something is wrong. You hardly look at me." "It's okay," I said, looking away. "I'm just worried about Lily. Let's not do this, okay?" She looked at me for another second, then sighed. "Okay, but if anything happens, you know I'm always here." "Yeah, I know," I said, feeling my insides tighten. I couldn't look her in the eye, knowing she'd probably been lying to me for 25 years. I went into the garage, ostensibly to check the car, but really just to be alone. I had already planned out how I would collect Andrew's DNA. He would definitely be at the dinner we were throwing to celebrate Lily's discharge. He always came to family gatherings, and I knew he liked to drink his coffee out of his favorite mug, the one Natalie kept for him. If I could get that mug after dinner, there would be enough saliva in it for the test. I called the lab in Columbus to check. "Columbus Genetics," a female voice answered. "Hello," I said, trying to sound confident. "I took a paternity test with you, code 14729. I want to take another one, compare another person's DNA with the children. Is that possible?" "Yes, of course," the woman replied. "We need DNA samples from the alleged father and the children. Do you already have samples from the children? Yes, I said. And for the second person, would the mug he drank from, for example, be suitable? Yes, if there is saliva, she replied, but it is better to bring several items for accuracy. The analysis will take 3 days if urgent, or a week as usual. The price is $400. 3 days, I said. I'll bring a sample on Saturday. Excellent, she replied. Sign everything clearly so as not to get confused. Okay, I said and hung up. I exhaled, my heart pounding. This was my plan. I would return to the lab after dinner, and in 3 days I would know if Andrew was the father. But for now, I had to keep my temper in check. I avoided Natalie, didn't touch her, didn't look her in the eye. When she tried to hug me or kiss me, I found an excuse to pull away to pick up my phone, to reach for my coffee. She sensed it, and I watched her smile tighten. On Friday night, Natalie was preparing for Lily's release. She bustled around the house, decorating the living room with balloons and "Welcome Home Lily" signs. "Steve, how do you like the color?" she asked, holding up the blue curtains she'd bought for Lily's room. "Will she like it?" "Yes, it's fine," I answered, barely glancing. She frowned. "Steve, are you even here? You didn't even look." "I looked," I lied. "It's beautiful. Lily will be delighted." "You look gloomy," she said, folding the curtains. "Is it Lily? She's getting better, Steve." "I know," I said, looking away. "I'm just tired. Don't worry about it." She sighed, but didn't ask again. I felt guilty, but I couldn't help it. I couldn't be with her like before, knowing that she was probably hiding such a huge lie. The next day, Saturday, we went to pick Lily up at the hospital. Natalie, Ethan, Noah, and I piled into 2 cars. I took my pickup, Natalie's minivan. Daniel was in college and promised to be there for dinner. Lily met us in her room, sitting on her bed with a crutch next to her. Her leg was in a cast, but she was smiling. "Dad," she said, holding out her hands. "Home at last." I hugged her carefully. "Hey, honey, how are you? Ready for freedom?" "Of course," she replied, rolling her eyes. "This hospital sucks. The nurses are always making you eat yogurt." Natalie laughed, adjusting her bag. "Lily, this is for your health. Come on, get ready. Let's go home." Noah jumped up to his sister. "Lil, I drew you a poster. It says, 'Welcome.'" "Cool, Noah," Lily said, smiling. "You're the best." Ethan stood in the doorway, fiddling with the strap of his backpack. "So, sister, ready for the party?" he asked, grinning. "If there's pizza there, then yes," Lily answered. "There'll be pizza," I said, helping her up. "Let's go, champion." We brought Lily home, and the house immediately came alive. Natalie hung balloons, Noah and Ethan hung posters. I looked at them and tried to smile, but inside I was seething. I knew there would be dinner that night, and Andrew would come. This was my chance to get his DNA. By evening, the house was full of people. Lucy's mother-in-law and father-in-law Frank, Natalie's parents, had arrived. Dan had returned from college, as promised. Andrew was the last to arrive, with a box of donuts and a smile from ear to ear. "Hey, gang," he shouted as he entered. "Where's our star?" Lily limped towards him on crutches. "Uncle Andy," she said, hugging him. "Did you bring the donuts?" "That's it," he replied, handing her the box. "For my beloved niece." I looked at them, and everything inside me was clenching. His brown eyes, her brown eyes, too similar. But I kept myself in check. "Andy, sit down," I said, pointing to the table. Natalie set the table like it was for the president. "Oh, cherry pie?" he asked, looking at Natalie. "Of course," she answered, smiling. "Your favorite." We sat down at the table, and a noisy dinner began. Lily talked about the hospital, Noah bragged about his new comic book, Ethan argued with Dan about some video games. Lucy and Frank added fuel to the fire by reminiscing about their younger years. I tried to be cheerful, raising a toast to Lily. "To our girl," I said, raising my glass of lemonade. "To be home, Lily." For Lily, they all said in unison, and she laughed. "Thank you, Dad," she said, looking at me. I smiled, but inside I was torn. I looked at Andrew, who was joking with Noah, and all I could think about was the mug. He was drinking coffee from his favorite blue mug with the Chicago Bulls logo on it. I knew that after dinner I would ask him to help in the kitchen so I could steal it without anyone noticing. When dessert was served, I got into action. "Andy, can you help me with the dishes?" I asked, standing up. "Yeah, no problem," he replied, finishing his coffee. We went into the kitchen, and I purposely loaded him down with a tray of plates so he wouldn't notice me putting the mug away. While he washed his hands, I quickly put it in a Ziploc bag and hid it in a drawer. My heart was pounding, but he didn't notice. "Steve, why are you so tense?" he asked, wiping his hands. "Lily's home, everything's fine." "Yeah, just tired," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's been a long week." "I understand," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Hang in there, brother." I nodded, but inside I was seething. I wanted to scream in his face, to ask how he could, but I held back. I had to wait until after dinner. If I started now, everything was going to hell, and I didn't want to ruin Lily's party. I went back to the living room, where everyone was laughing at Frank's story about his old car. I sat down, trying to look normal, but all I could think about was the mug in the drawer and how soon I would find out the truth. Lily's welcome home dinner was in full swing in our home in Maplewood, Ohio. The table was groaning with food pizza, burgers, Natalie's cherry pie. Everyone was there. Me, Stephen Thompson, my wife Natalie, our children Daniel, Ethan, Lily, Noah, my mother-in-law Lucy and father-in-law Frank, and my brother Andrew. From the outside, it looked like a celebration. Lily laughing, Noah showing off his new comic book, Andrew cracking jokes. But I knew this evening would change everything. In my jacket pocket was an envelope with the DNA test results, confirming that I was not the biological father of either of our children. I had suspected Andrew, and today I had taken his mug for another test, but I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I was going to lay the truth out there right at this table, and my heart was pounding with the pressure. I sat there listening to Lily talk about the hospital, trying to smile. Natalie was busy serving everyone food, Andrew was refilling the lemonade, and Dan and Ethan were arguing about some video game. Lucy and Frank were reminiscing about old stories. I toasted Lily so no one would notice how tense I was. "To our Lily," I said, raising my glass. "To be home, my dear." For Lily, everyone echoed, and she smiled, looking at me. "Thank you, Dad," she said, her brown eyes twinkling. I gritted my teeth, those eyes were so much like Andrew's. Dinner was going on as usual, but I was waiting for the moment. I decided to spill it when dessert came, so as not to ruin Lily's evening. I helped Natalie carry the dirty plates into the kitchen, where I had already hidden Andrew's mug in a Ziploc bag. When I returned to the living room, I felt like the time had come. My heart was pounding like a hammer, but I knew it was now or never. I stood up, holding the envelope in my pocket. Everyone was chatting and laughing, but I said loudly, "People, can I have your attention for a minute?" The conversation died down. Everyone turned to look at me, even Noah, who was digging into his pie. Natalie looked at me in surprise. "Steve, what's wrong?" she asked, smiling, but there was concern in her voice. "I have something important," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "And a question for some of the people at this table." Lucy frowned. "Steve, what are you talking about? Is everything okay?" I looked at Natalie, then at Andrew. He was sitting there holding his glass, his eyes narrowed as if he suspected something. "You'll find out now," I said, looking at Natalie. "It's about loyalty, about trust, and about betrayal." Silence fell over the room. Ethan stopped chewing. Lily froze with her fork in her hand. Noah looked at me with wide eyes. Frank cleared his throat, and Lucy gasped. "Steve, what are you saying?" Natalie asked, her voice shaking. "Are you kidding?" "I'm not kidding," I replied, feeling the anger rising inside me. I pulled the envelope out of my pocket and placed it on the table. "These are the results of the DNA test. Very interesting, I must say. Natalie turned pale. What tests? She asked, her voice quieter. Steve, what are you talking about? Paternity tests, I said, looking her straight in the eye. My children. Everyone froze. Even the air seemed heavier. Lucy covered her mouth with her hand. Frank frowned. Dan, our eldest, looked at me as if he couldn't believe his ears. Andrew looked down, clutching his glass. Steve, are you serious? Ethan asked, his voice hoarse. Is this real? Yes, I answered, opening the envelope. I took out the sheets and began handing them out. One to Natalie, one to Andrew, one to Dan, and the fourth I threw on the table. Read. Natalie grabbed the paper, her hands shaking. She ran her eyes over the lines, and her face turned white as paper. This is a lie, she screamed, throwing the paper on the table. Steve, what kind of nonsense is this? Where did you get this? Did you fake it? Forged, I asked, feeling my anger boiling. Are you serious, Nat? Do you think I just went and fabricated documents to blacken your name? Why would I do that? I don't know, she screamed, her voice breaking. Maybe you went crazy after Lily's accident. You're out of your mind, Steve. How could you? You were checking behind my back like some kind of paranoid person. I clenched my fists to keep from breaking down. Paranoid, I said, almost hissing. Are you telling me about meanness? After 25 years of... Daddy, Lily interrupted, her voice full of tears. What are you talking about? I looked at her and my heart sank. She was sitting there clutching her crotch, her eyes full of fear. Noah was next to me, looking at me, not understanding anything. Ethan was gritting his teeth, and Dan was leafing through the paper, his face pale. Steve, did you really do this? Frank asked, his voice shaking. Did you check the kids? Yes, I replied, not taking my eyes off Natalie. And you know what I found out. I'm not their father, not one of them. Lucy gasped, covering her mouth. Oh my God, Steve, how could you? It could, I said, because the hospital found out Lily's blood type was O positive, and I'm AB positive. That's impossible, Nat. You know why. Natalie opened her mouth, but said nothing. Her eyes darted around as if she were looking for a way out. Andrew remained silent, staring at the table, his fingers clutching the results sheet. Andrew, I said, turning to him, do you have something to say? He looked up, and I saw something in his eyes, fear, shame, I don't know. Steve, this is... He began, but his voice broke. This is nonsense. Why? Read, I barked, pointing to the sheet. Everything is clear there. He looked down at the paper, his face growing even paler. Everyone was silent. Only Lucy could be heard sobbing softly. Ethan suddenly stood up, his chair creaking. Dad, what does this mean? He asked, his voice shaking. Is it true? You're not our father? I looked at him, and it hurt. Ethan, I started, but I didn't know what to say. Probability of paternity, 0%, Dan read aloud, his voice quiet but firm. He looked at Natalie. Mom, is this true? Natalie trembled, her eyes filling with tears. It's a mistake, she cried. It's all a lie. Steve, you faked this. You can't do this to us. I forged it, I said, almost shouting. Natalie, you lied to me for 25 years. You and... I looked at Andrew. He. Nothing happened, she screamed, standing up. Andrew, tell them it's nonsense. Everyone looked at Andrew. He sat with his head down, the paper in his hand crumpled. He sighed, so heavily, as if the life was flowing out of him, and said quietly, Forgive me. The room froze. Lily gasped, covering her mouth. Noah looked at him, uncomprehending. Ethan slammed his fist on the table. What? He shouted. Mom, is this true? You're with him? Natalie recoiled, her face contorted. Ethan, no, it's not, she cried, but her voice was shaking. It's a mistake. A mistake? Ethan barked, his eyes blazing. He said sorry. You lied to us. Ethan, please, Natalie began, reaching out to him, but he pulled away. Don't touch me, he shouted. You're not our mother anymore. Lily began to cry, clinging to Lucy. Daddy, she sobbed, looking at me. What's going on? I looked at her and my heart broke. I didn't want the kids to hear this, but they deserved the truth. Lily, honey, I said, trying to sound gentle. I just found out. I'm not your biological father, but I love you, and that won't change. Dan stood up, his face white. Dad, he said quietly, are you serious? Is this all true? Yes, I answered, looking at him. I'm sorry, son. Natalie was sobbing, covering her face with her hands. Steve, I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry. Andrew was silent, looking at the floor. I looked at him, and rage boiled, but I held back. I wanted to know everything, but not here, not in front of the children. We need to talk, I said, looking at Natalie and Andrew. But not now, not in front of everyone. Lucy was crying, hugging Lily. Frank looked at me as if he didn't believe me. Noah suddenly said, Dad, are you not our dad anymore? I walked up to him and put my hand on his shoulder. Noah, I'm always your dad. Always. It doesn't change anything. He nodded, but his eyes were full of tears. I stood in the living room, looking at my family, or what was left of it. Natalie sat with her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Lily was clinging to Grandma Lucy, her eyes full of tears. Noah was looking at me as if I could fix everything. Ethan had his fists clenched, his face flushed with anger. Dan, our eldest, was pale, the test results shaking in his hand. Daddy, Lily said, her voice shaking, please don't go. I stepped towards her, feeling my heart breaking. Lily, honey, I said, kneeling in front of her. I'm not going anywhere. I'll always be your daddy, okay? She sniffled and nodded, hugging me. I felt her crutch digging into my side, but I didn't care. I held her tightly to me. Dan came over and grabbed my hand. Dad, he said quietly, his voice hoarse, you won't leave us? Never, I answered, looking him in the eye. You are my children. Always will be. It doesn't change anything. He nodded, his eyes shining. Ethan was still standing by the door, his fists clenched. Ethan, I called, come here. He shook his head, but still took a step towards me. Dad, is it true? He asked, his voice breaking. Everything you said? Yes, I said, feeling my throat tighten. I'm sorry, son, but I love you. That won't change. Ethan nodded, but his face was like stone. Noah ran up and hugged me, burying his face in my shirt. Dad, you're not leaving for good? He asked, his voice muffled. No, Noah, I said, stroking his head. I'll always be here, I promise. I hugged them all, Lily, Noah, Ethan, Dan. We stood there for a few seconds, and I felt their warmth giving me strength. Natalie looked up, her face wet with tears. Steve, she whispered, standing up. Please don't go. Let's talk. I'm sorry. I looked at her, and everything inside me went numb. I felt nothing, no love, no pity, only emptiness. Natalie, I said, my voice cold, I'm filing for divorce. We have nothing to talk about. No, she sobbed, stepping toward me. Steve, for the kids' sake, please, let's fix this. Fix it, I asked, shaking my head. You lied to me for 25 years. You and him. I nodded toward the empty chair where Andrew was sitting. I only just noticed that he was gone. The front door was ajar. He'd escaped while we were talking. It can't be fixed. She grabbed my hand. Steve, I beg you, she said, her voice shaking. For the kids' sake. For the sake of the children, I will remain their father, I snapped. But I'm done with you. I turned and walked towards the door. Lily sobbed again. Dad, she called, and I stopped. Lily, I'll call tomorrow, I said, looking at her. You're all my children. That won't change, but I have to go. I walked out, slamming the door. It was dark outside. The air was cold. I got in my truck and just sat there, looking at our house. The lights in the windows, the balloons on the porch, everything that was our life, left behind. I started the car and drove to my friend Mike's house, who lived 10 minutes away. I called him on the way. "Mike, it's Steve," I said when he answered. "Can I stay the night?" "Steve, what happened?" he asked, his voice worried. "Are you okay?" "No," I replied. "I'll tell you when I get there. I just have somewhere to be." "Come in," he said. "The door is open." I arrived at Mike's, dropped my bag in his guest room, and collapsed on the couch. He brought me a beer and sat down across from me. "Steve, what happened?" he asked. "You look like you've been run over by a truck." "Almost," I replied, taking a sip of beer. "Natalie, she cheated on me. The kids aren't mine." "What?" Mike stared at me. "Are you serious?" "Yes," I said, looking at the floor. "I did a DNA test. 0%. All four." "Shit," he breathed. "Steve, I don't even know what to say. Who's the father?" "I think Andrew," I said, my voice hardening. "My brother." "Your brother?" Mike shook his head. This is crazy. Are you sure?" "Not yet," I replied. "But I'll check. I've already taken his DNA." "Steve," he said, looking at me. "I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "Divorce," I said, "and I'll take care of the kids. They're mine, Mike, no matter what the doe says." "I understand," he said. "Stay as long as you need. We'll figure it out." "Thank you," I said, and we fell silent. The next day, I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in Maplewood. I didn't want to go home. I called the lawyer Mike recommended and started filing for divorce. "Mr. Thompson," said the lawyer, Bill, when I arrived at his office, "we need to discuss the details. Do you want a division of property?" "No," I replied. "Let everything stay with Natalie and the kids. I just want a divorce." "Okay," he said, making notes. "We can file this week. You'll have to appear in court in a couple of months." "Agreed," I said. "The sooner the better." I called Dan to tell him what was going on. He answered right away. "Dad, where are you?" he asked, his voice worried. "You left yesterday, and we're all in shock." "I know, son," I replied. "I rented an apartment. I need time. But I'm not abandoning you, do you hear?" "Yeah," he said. "Dad, I don't know what to think. Mom's crying, Lily is too. Ethan's not talking at all." "I'm sorry," I said. "Dan, I'll always be your father. That won't change." "I know," he replied. "Dad, can I come to you?" "Of course," I said. "Come whenever you want." A couple of days later, Dan came to my apartment. He looked tired, but he hugged me tightly. "Dad," he said, sitting down on my couch, "I can't stay there. Mom, I can't look at her." "I understand," I said, sitting down next to him. "Stay here as long as you need." "Thank you," he said. "Dad, are you really not going to leave us?" "Never," I answered, looking into his eyes. "You, Ethan, Lily, Noah, you are my children." Ethan also called a few days later. "Dad, I want to come to you," he said, his voice angry. "I can't live with her. She lied to us." "Come," I said. "My door is always open." Ethan moved in with me a week later. He was quiet, but I could tell he was in pain. Lily and Noah stayed with Natalie. Lily was still recovering from the accident, and Noah seemed to feel sorry for his mother. But they called me every day. "Dad, when can I come?" Lily asked into the phone, her voice shaking. "Whenever you want, my dear," I replied. "How's your leg?" "Better," she said, "but I miss you." "Me too," I said. "See you soon." Natalie wrote me a letter a week later. I found it in my mailbox, long, 3 pages. She wrote that after my diagnosis of low fertility, she despaired of having children and decided to have an affair with another man so that we could have a family. She wrote that she had always loved only me and that the other man was just a donor. I read it and just smirked. She thought I would believe her. 25 years of lies, and this is her excuse. I crumpled the letter and threw it away. I called Lily to check on her. "Dad, Mommy cries all the time," she said. "I don't know what to do." "Lily, honey," I replied, "it's not your fault. Just get better, okay?" "Okay," she said. "Dad, I love you." "And I you," I replied, feeling my throat tighten. The kids were suffering, and it was killing me. But they were there for me, and that gave me strength. I knew Andrew had run away, he'd quit his job and left town, Mike had told me. I didn't regret it. He didn't exist for me anymore. I focused on the kids and starting a new life. The divorce was just the beginning. It had been a month since I had left my home in Maplewood, Ohio, after learning that I was not the biological father of my children, Daniel, Ethan, Lily, and Noah. The revelation at a family dinner, where I had revealed the results of a DNA test, showing that my brother Andrew was most likely their real father, had shattered everything I had thought of as my family. I had rented a small apartment in the city and filed for divorce from Natalie, my wife who had kept the truth a secret for 25 years. The children were in shock, especially Lily, who was still recovering from the car accident. I had tried to spend as much time with them as I could to help them cope, but I could see how much they were suffering. Lily had become depressed, but had begun to open up to me. Natalie, according to the children, was devastated, but I felt nothing but cold indifference toward her. The most important thing to me now was being there for my children, and I was glad they were supporting me. They made the decision not to communicate with Andrew, and that was the key moment for me. They chose me as a father, no matter what. I was sitting in my apartment, a small one-room apartment with a shabby couch and an old TV. Dan and Ethan had moved in with me a few weeks after that dinner. Dan, our 23-year-old eldest, said he couldn't stay with Natalie because he felt angry every time he looked at her. Ethan, 20, agreed. Lily and Noah were still staying with Natalie. Lily needed help with her injured leg, and Noah, our 13-year-old youngest, just felt sorry for his mother. But they came over almost every day, and I made room for them in my bedroom, sleeping on the fold-out couch. On Saturday morning, I was making breakfast, eggs and toast, when Dan came down from the bedroom, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, have you been sleeping on that couch again?" he asked, sitting down at the table. "It creaks like an old barn." "It's okay," I chuckled, putting a plate in front of him. "I'm used to it. How are you, son?" "It's fine," he shrugged, but I could tell he was still out of his element. It's all weird, living here without my mom." "I understand," I said, sitting down opposite. "If you want, we can talk." "I don't know," he said, picking at his eggs. "I'm just still mad at her, at Andrew." "Me too," I admitted. "But you guys are not to blame for anything. I want you to know that." "I know, Dad," he said, looking at me. You really won't leave us?" "Never," I answered firmly. "You are my children, Dan. Always will be." He nodded, and I saw his shoulders relax a little. Ethan stumbled into the kitchen, disheveled, wearing his favorite Red Sox t-shirt. "Morning, Dad," he said, grabbing the toast. "Dan, did you eat it all again?" "Still cooking," I said, pointing to the frying pan. "Sit down, Ethan." "Cool," he replied, plopping down on a chair. "Dad, are we going to Lily and Noah's today?" "Yeah," I nodded. "They asked to come over. Lily wants to go to the movies, if her leg allows." "Cool," Ethan said, but his voice was quieter than usual. "How is she? Is she sad?" "She's sad," I answered honestly. "But I talk to her every day. She needs time." Lily called me last night, and her voice was so quiet I barely recognized her. "Dad," she said on the phone, "can I come see you tomorrow?" "Of course, dear," I replied. "How's your leg?" "Better," she said, "but I don't want to be home. Mom cries all the time, and it makes me feel worse." "I understand," I said, trying to speak softly. "Come, Lily. We'll think of something to make you happy." "Thank you, Dad," she replied. "I love you." "And you," I said, feeling my throat tighten. Now, sitting with Dan and Ethan, I thought about how much this truth had hurt them all. Lily, who was already struggling with the aftermath of the accident, barely spoke to Natalie anymore. She texted me every day, asking when she could come over. I tried to be there for her, but I could see how hard it was for her. After breakfast, we drove to Natalie's house to pick up Lily and Noah. I parked in front of our old house, my heart aching too many memories. Lily came out on the porch, limping on crutches, but smiling. "Dad," she shouted, waving her hand. "I'm ready." "Hey, champ," I said, getting out of the car and helping her down. "How are you?" "It's fine," she replied, but her eyes were sad. "I just want to be with you." Noah ran out after him, carrying a backpack full of comics. "Dad, can I come too?" he asked. "Sure," I said, ruffling his hair. "Get in the car." Natalie came out onto the porch, her face pale, her eyes red. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "Steve," she said quietly, "thank you for coming for them." "Yeah," I answered coldly, without looking at her. "I'll bring them this evening." "Steve," she began, stepping closer, "can we talk, please?" "We have nothing to talk about," I snapped, opening the car door. "Lily, Noah, let's go." Lily looked at her mother, but said nothing, just climbed into the car. Noah didn't say anything either, but I saw him glance guiltily at Natalie. I started the engine, and we drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Natalie standing on the porch, hugging herself. "Dad," Lily said as we drove away, "Mom cries all the time. I don't know what to do." "Lily, my dear," I said, looking at her through the mirror, "it's not your fault. Just get better, and I'm always here for you, got it?" "Yeah," she said, but her voice was quiet. "Dad, I don't want to talk to her. I'm angry." "I understand," I said. "You don't have to decide anything now. Just be with us." "Okay," she said, looking out the window. Noah suddenly said, "Dad, is Uncle Andy not coming anymore?" I gripped the steering wheel. "Andrew. After that dinner, he disappeared, quit his job, left town, my friend Mike had told me. The kids hadn't mentioned him until now, and I didn't know how to respond." "I don't know Noah," I said honestly. "Do you want him to come?" "No," Noah said quickly, shaking his head. He lied to us. I don't want to see him." "Me too," Lily added, her voice firm. "He's not my uncle anymore." Ethan, who was sitting next to him, nodded. "Yes, he's nobody to us," he said, his voice angry. "Let him not come back." Dan, who had been silent the whole way, suddenly said, "Dad, he never even tried to call. Not once." "That's good," I replied. "You made your choice, and I'm with you. You are my children, and that's the main thing." Lily smiled, albeit weakly. "Thanks, Dad. You're the best." I felt a warmth spreading in my chest. Their words that they didn't want to see Andrew were like proof to me that I was still their father, no matter what. It was a key moment that gave me the strength to move on. We arrived at the water park I had promised the kids. Lily couldn't ride the slides because of her cast, but she sat with us, laughing, while Noah and Ethan raced around the pools. Dan stayed with her, helping her with her crutches. "Dad, that's cool," Noah said, climbing out of the water, dripping wet. "Can we do it again?" "Go ahead," I laughed. "Just don't drown." "I won't drown," he grinned, running away. Lily sat nearby, looking at her brothers. "Dad," she said quietly, "I'm glad we're here, with you." "Me too, darling," I replied, squeezing her hand. "We'll always be together." That evening, we went to a pizza place. The kids chatted and joked, and I watched Lily come to life. She was still depressed the accident. The truth about Natalie and Andrew had hit her hard, but her smile gave me hope. "Dad, can I stay overnight?" Lily asked as we ate pizza. "Of course," I said, "and Noah too, if he wants." "I want to," Noah said quickly, chewing a slice of pizza. "It's sad at home." "Then it's decided," I said. "You'll stay with me." When we got back to my apartment, I set them up in the bedroom and lay down on the couch. Ethan and Dan were there too, and we were all watching some silly comedy. They were laughing, and I felt like I could breathe freely for the first time in a month. Later, after the kids went to bed, I received a message from Natalie. "Steve," she wrote, "thank you for taking care of them. I know you hate me, but I still love you. And the kids." I read it and said nothing. I didn't hate her, I just didn't feel anything. She had destroyed our family, and her suffering was her choice. I looked at my sleeping children through the open bedroom door and knew that they were my true family. Their decision to reject Andrew showed that they had chosen me, and that was all I needed. 3 months passed. I left home, filed for divorce, and rented a small apartment in the city. Andrew disappeared from my life, moving out of town, and Natalie was left alone, suffering from the consequences of her deception. But most importantly, my children were still with me. We spent time together, and I realized that love for them was stronger than any biology. I began to believe that new happiness awaited me in spite of the pain. I was sitting in my one-bedroom apartment, staring at the old TV. Dan and Ethan had moved in with me permanently. Lily and Noah came over often, sleeping in the bedroom while I slept on the fold-out couch. The divorce from Natalie was almost finalized. The lawyer said it would be finalized in a couple of weeks. I hadn't spoken to her except for the occasional phone call about the kids. She tried to talk, asking to meet, but I refused. I didn't want to see her. "Dad, are you on that couch again?" Dan asked, coming out of the bedroom with a mug of coffee. He was 23, finishing college, but he looked older because of everything we'd been through. "Yeah," I chuckled, stretching. "He's not as bad as he looks." "It's time you got a proper bed," he said, sitting down opposite her. "Ethan and I can chip in." "Don't start," I replied, waving my hand. "I'm fine as is. How are you? Have you finished your thesis?" "Almost," he said, looking into his mug. "Dad, I'm still thinking about Mom and about Andrew." I nodded. Andrew. After that dinner, he quit his job and left Maplewood. Mike, my friend, said he was seen in Cincinnati, but I didn't care. He wasn't my brother anymore. "I understand," I said, "but he made his choice, and we made ours." "Yeah," Dan nodded. I can't believe he's doing this to us." "Me too," I said, "but we'll get through this, son. You, me, Ethan, Lily, Noah, we're family." Ethan stumbled into the kitchen, tugging at his hair. "Morning, Dad," he said, grabbing a piece of toast from my plate. "Dan, did you drink all the coffee again?" "Make it yourself," Dan snapped, but without malice. "Dad, are Lily and Noah coming today?" "Yes," I answered. "Lily called and said she wanted to go bowling. Her leg is almost not bothering her anymore." "Cool," Ethan said, sitting down. "I'm coming with you. We have to beat Lily." "Dream on," Dan chuckled. "She'll beat you, even with a crutch." I looked at them and felt warmth. They suffered after that dinner, especially Lily. She had it the hardest: the accident, the cast, and then the truth about Natalie and Andrew. She fell into depression, barely spoke to her mother, but she began to open up to me. She called every day, came over, and I watched her slowly come back to life. Lily called me yesterday evening. "Dad," she said, her voice quiet, "can I come over tomorrow?" "Of course, honey," I replied. "Want me to pick you up with Noah?" "Yeah," she said. "Mom, she's sad all the time. I don't want to be there." "I understand," I said. "Come on over and let's have some fun." "Thank you, Dad," she replied. "You're the best." "You too," I said, smiling into the phone. This morning I went to pick them up at Natalie's house. I parked and Lily and Noah got out, both carrying backpacks. Lily was still limping, but she no longer used her crutch. Noah was carrying the comic book I'd given him. "Dad," Lily shouted, smiling. "I'm ready." "Hey, champion," I said, hugging her. "How's your leg?" "Okay," she replied. "I can walk, but not quickly." "Noah, are you ready too?" I asked, ruffling his hair. "Yeah," he said, holding up the comic. Dad, I finished it. Cool. Well done, I said, opening the car door. Get in. Natalie came out onto the porch, her face pale, her hair pulled back into a messy ponytail. She looked like she had aged 10 years. Steve, she said quietly, thank you for taking them. Yeah, I answered without looking at her. I'll bring them this evening. Steve, she began, stepping closer. Can we talk, please? Not now, I snapped, getting into the car. Lily, Noah, let's go. Lily looked at her mother, but said nothing, just climbed into the car. Noah didn't say anything either, but I saw him glance guiltily at Natalie. I started the engine, and we drove away. In the mirror, I saw her standing there, hugging herself. Dad, Lily said as we drove away. Mom cries all the time. I don't know what to do. Lily, honey, I said, looking at her through the mirror. It's not your fault. Just be with us, okay? Okay, she replied, looking out the window. I'm glad we're with you. Noah suddenly said, Dad, I don't want to go to her either. She's sad, and that makes me feel bad. I understand, Noah, I said. You can be with me as long as you want. We went bowling like Lily promised. She sat at a table watching Ethan and Noah compete. Dan helped her with juice while I threw the ball. Dad, you suck at playing, Lily laughed when I missed. Hey, I'm warming up, I replied, grinning. Give me a couple of throws. Dream on, Ethan said, throwing a strike. Lily, you're next. I can't, she said, pointing to her leg. But I'm rooting for you. Then cheer for me, Noah said, grabbing the ball. I'm going to win. We laughed, and I saw Lily smile for the first time in a long time. She was still depressed, but she came alive with us. After bowling, we went to a pizza place where the kids ordered a huge pepperoni pizza. Dad, Noah said, chewing a piece of food, can I stay the night? Of course, I replied. And Lily too, if she wants. I want to, Lily said quickly. At home, I don't know. I don't want to go there. Then it's decided, I said. You'll stay with me. Dan looked at me. Dad, are you really okay? He asked quietly. I know it's hard for you too. I'm coping, I replied. The main thing is that you're with me. That's all I need. Ethan nodded. Dad, you're cool, he said. If I were you, I don't know, I couldn't do it. I could, I said, clapping him on the shoulder. You guys give me strength. In the evening, when we returned to the apartment, I settled the children in the bedroom and lay down on the couch. They were watching a comedy film, laughing, and I felt like we were still a family. Natalie sent a message. Steve, thank you for taking care of them. I know it's my fault. Please don't hate me. I read it and didn't respond. I didn't hate her, but I didn't feel sorry for her either. She had made her choice, and now we were all living with the consequences. I knew she was suffering. The children said she had lost weight. She barely left the house. But that wasn't my concern. I remembered Noah and Lily saying they didn't want Andrew. That was important to me. They chose me, despite the truth. It gave me hope that I could start over. I looked at my children sleeping in the bedroom and thought that maybe there was something good waiting for me. I believed that the love I had for them was real, stronger than any biology. This was my new beginning. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.